you've seen my Instagram. You know my priorities are God, family, Taylor Swift. That's it. and so I said, I will not be at the game tomorrow because two of those three things I'm doing tomorrow, maybe the third, because I'm sure the Spirit's going to be there as well. So all three of my priorities are going to be covered.
Oh, man.
I apologize.
That's not even a question.
Yeah, I'm
the
taking
third
my
is
daughter.
absolutely there.
Yes.
Welcome to Brain Stoke. We are in studio tonight, excited for this episode. It is brought to you by Aspire Counseling and Aspire Medical. We're actually in their offices tonight, so thank you, Liza Telford and the Aspire folks. This is an awesome place to be, and hopefully our guest tonight's really comfortable on the couch for this
nice.
daily dose of struggle and Stoke. So here we go.
Yeah, so we've got Souli Phongsavath on the couch.
Hello, hello.
So Souli is well known as the soccer coach at Davis High.
Yeah,
Right?
Yep,
Yeah, that's where your claim to fame has come.
I guess so.
Yeah. Souli's actually one of my best friends, and I'm super excited to have him. His story is unique, how his family came to the United States, and just kind of the drive that Souli's had to. We're excited to learn why he wanted to become a teacher, an educator, and a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And Souli's had a ton of success as a coach, specifically at Davis High. I think you've got 7 state championships.
Yes.
5 with the girls.
Yes.
And 2 with the boys.
Yes.
So obviously you've had tons of success.
Well, thank you.
And we were talking earlier, we're not sure we'll ever have this opportunity to talk with a coach that's had as much success as you. So
I'm sure you'll find somebody.
he's being humble. But yeah, so anyway, you've got a unique story.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So
Can I ask the first question?
For sure.
Just to get it out there. Is your ink on your lower back Lancer or Dart?
It's, you know what? That's very difficult. I remember when I first got the job at Davis, I got so much crap from Preston and all the Lancers because I think it took them 10 years to accept the fact that I was actually working for Davis High. But no, now, yeah, I'm 100% a Dart, but...
Here's what I've learned. With
There's a
regards-
D on the hat. There's a
Yes.
D on the
That's
hat.
right.
I'm
That's
just
a
saying.
represent.
He's wearing a Dart hat. Here's what I've learned over the years, because I now have a lot of friends from Davis High, and ultimately, the rivalry meant something to the Lancers.
Exactly.
Davis could care less. They don't even know where the schools at Lancers Layton High is at.
This is true. It's like Viewmont was their big rival, and for some reason, we just in our minds at Layton just thought that
We were supposed
hey,
to hate Davis.
we hate Davis, yeah.
And
so-
Davis like, Layton? Do we even play you guys? That was the perspective that I would get from the Darts.
I've
Was there
noticed
some
that.
little brother syndrome going on over there?
big time.
Yes.
You know?
Well, anyone that lives in Kaysville rarely travels north. They would rather travel south to Bountiful to go to Walmart or to go to any of those stores. It's rarely going north to Layton where we are.
Yeah. So
The mall was there.
The mall, yep.
Chick-fil-A was there.
Yep.
No,
Now-
it's
Now the claim to fame's the new temple, LDS temple that's going up. Kaysville's punch in the air right now that they
that's-
never got that.
that is actually funny.
totally.
that Layton is getting the temple.
It's our claim to fame right
We're
here.
gonna
We
have to
gotta get it
circle
while we
back
got
to
it.
that
Yes.
one because the roles have reversed,
Yes.
right? Where it's like, well, yeah, who was righteous now?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's something going on in Layton for sure.
Oh
So-
gosh, so funny. How long you been at Davis High?
This is 17 years, I think.
And
yeah.
you're a
Wow.
history teacher.
World history teacher.
And have you
yes.
done that basically
I've
all
done
17?
that the whole time that I've been there, yes.
Okay. All right. So you're from a landlocked country.
Correct.
We
Laos.
always laughed about that. Souli hates
couldn't
to swim.
Yeah.
And so he would always say, it's because I'm from a landlocked country. I don't like to swim.
It's not that I don't like to, I just cannot float. It's the problem. Technically, I can swim, but if I stop, I'm gonna drown and just fall.
You
Funny
can't-
story. I think when I was 25-ish, it was my New Year's resolution to learn how to swim. So I called up the city, Clearfield City, and I said, "Hey, I'm looking for times for swimming lessons." And they gave me all these times, but I'm like, "Hey, that doesn't work. I have to work." And they're like, "Oh, these are for you? We've never had anybody this old that actually had to work. These are for all these teenagers." So she gave me the number of my own personal instructor. She said, "Hey, come at 6 a.m. She'll help you out. It's just you and her, one-on-one." And she gave up on me. I went once. She gave up on me after a half hour. Had to save me because I almost drowned at swimming lessons.
I love it.
And she just had to say, "Hey, some people just can't float. No, sorry, I can't help you." So,
Dude, I did not know
that was it.
part.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, I love
So
that.
you never rocked Layton's surf and swim?
Oh, I would go, but yeah, like I said, I can't.
Just nachos, see the ladies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just wade in the shallow water and whatnot.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I am, yes, landlocked country Laos.
Yeah. Okay, so you were born there, obviously. How old were you when your family came to the United States?
2.
You were 2. So you don't necessarily have a memory. Of
No, I have no, not really at all.
How did so from what I recall, your family ended up being sponsored
Correct.
to come to the U.S.
Yes.
Tell us about that. Like, what was that? What did your parents tell you about that process, or how did it work?
Yeah, it was. So my parents were probably mid-20s, 4 kids, all under the age of 6. So my brother was 6, my sister was 2, or 4. I was 2, and I had a little sister who was just barely born. And so in the middle of the night, we escaped down the Mekong River, and I don't know all the details, but my parents described, gunfire, trying to stop us. So we go down to the Mekong River, and then we were at a refugee camp in Thailand for a little while, waiting to get sponsored, waiting for somebody to help us come to the United States. And luckily, we weren't there too long, and a group of families from Layton sponsored us, and then we came over, helped us get jobs, and my dad ended up working for one of the people that did it as a roofer. So they were bankers in Laos, and then since we came over as refugees, my dad had to do manual labor. My mom got a job housekeeping, and she basically worked 2 jobs for most of the time that I was in high school.
Wow. What was happening in the country that forced you guys to leave in the night?
Well, Laos is communist, and you could argue it's one of the few countries today that is kind of still communist, right? And so the Vietnam War, obviously, Laos was actually the most bombed country during the Vietnam War, just because some of the trails and that the United States bombed it more than any other country. So that was going on, just opportunity as well, escape communism, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine being where I am now and doing what my parents did. Like, hey, we're going to pick up in the middle of the night, go to a country we have no idea the customs, the language, we don't know anybody, and start a whole new life with, because I have 4 kids now, and it's especially all under the age of 6 is incredible.
Right.
Do they talk any about that in terms of detail? They're bankers, but was there planning involved? Did they have a plan for a certain amount of time before they were like, okay, we're ready. We're going to do this now? I mean, that sounds
No, I didn't
incredible.
really get into the specifics, and they don't. It's almost like they don't love to talk about it, just because it was probably more traumatic for them than anything. And so, but yeah, I don't really know that much of the specifics. I do know that when we got here in the United States, my dad had talked to some of the sponsors and said, "Hey, I have relatives over there. Can we help them come over?" And so he helped my cousin and his family came over. So 2 or 3 other families ended up coming over and in Layton with us because of my dad talking to those guys, which is amazing.
That is amazing. When I think about that, to your point about having children on your own and deciding to do that, my head goes, what is the state of, your lives when you're willing to risk something that
Oh, yeah.
dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously something was up.
Yeah. No, it gives me just a different outlook on, the crisis on the border here with Mexico, and these people are seeking asylum, and a lot of times people, I don't want to get too political or anything like that, but when people sit there and say, hey, they just want to come get a free ride in this country, I just think back to my parents. You're thinking, they didn't want a free ride. They just wanted opportunity. And to be able to risk their lives to be able to do that, which I know a lot of families are doing, coming from Guatemala or Mexico, coming to our border, you're risking your life just to get to that point, period. So I don't think many of those people are looking for a free ride or any of that type of stuff. They're just looking for a better place for their family and so forth. So, yeah.
What? So, your parents had an arranged marriage,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Which is remarkable in and of itself.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're still married.
Still married.
Happy as can be.
Yeah, last time I checked. I don't
Last-
know.
yeah.
Correct.
I mean, you've got to look at your parents and just like be in awe
Oh, yeah.
about how awesome they are.
Oh, yeah. They are, you don't really think about it. Like growing up as an immigrant from an immigrant family, you really were almost, I'm ashamed to say it, but you were kind of that, right? You didn't want people to know necessarily your story and, the struggle that they had to go through to come up through here. But the older that you get, you sit back and, especially having a family of my own, sit and see all the sacrifices that they made, all those things that they did. Yeah, to come from an arranged marriage, and my mom hated my dad big time. There's stories of, I don't know if they're just joking, but she tried to run him over one time when they were in Laos. Would have to marry him because he was my mom was my dad's second wife, and so it was arranged. She didn't like it, but yeah,
She didn't have a choice.
she didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to see the marriage grow into what it is now, to see it from, just to see the culture change too, because you're not super affectionate in the Asian cultures, especially with your kids and with each other, in front of the kids especially. And so to see them adopt some of the Western ways here in America and be more affectionate with one another as well as with us has just kind of been cool to see their growth as in a marriage,
How are they as grandparents? What are they
Amazing.
like?
Well, my dad's just an interesting guy. He just shows up for dinner, plays for a little bit with the grandparents. He's out, right? He's out doing his own thing. Like he'll just do his. But my mom is just absolutely amazing. Like,
Yeah.
they love to have the grandkids there, cooking dinner for them all the time, just doing stuff. Yeah, it's great.
Huh.
Able to watch them whenever possible.
She loves it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she just loves it.
Your mom, Molly. right?
Molly, yep. Molly and Buntan, but he changed his name to Tom.
He goes by Tom now.
He goes by Tom now. He just said, "Hey, you had Tom Weiniger's the grocery store was by us
In Layton.
Yep, in
Of
Layton."
course.
And so he was like, "Hey, Tom Cruise, Tom Weiniger." That's
Oh,
what he even said.
yeah.
He's like, "That's the name I want to be. I can change my name."
Makes sense.
Of course.
And now they're living they truly have lived the American dream, where you go from working 2 jobs, humble beginnings, having nothing. All of us, when we first moved to the United States, you had 6 of us in a 2-room apartment duplex, and you had 4 kids on 2 beds. Just trying to make it work. And now they're driving a Mercedes, and my mom loves her Louis Vuitton bags and Gucci bags. So it's truly the American dream for them, Yeah.
Did you know that you guys were struggling to make ends meet, or did you have any clue? Like, did you recognize maybe on the
no.
playground or like? In
Well,
your
you're growing up in the '80s and things like that, and the climate isn't as what it is today. So we got, I got called a bunch of racial slurs all the time, and so you were very well aware of that.
that you were different.
Yeah, that you're different. Got called chink, Japanese, Chinese, dirty knees, look at these, all these types of things all the time,
Mm-hmm.
all the time, especially in elementary. Then my name, Souli, all of that type of stuff. They pig suey. You just get made fun of as kids tease other people. But yeah, you're well aware of that, and I was very well aware of the fact that we, didn't look like everybody or didn't have the needs or had the needs, but didn't have what everyone else had.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
How did that tell us how that felt in your development? Because at those years, every kid I feel like is a self-esteem case to a certain degree.
For sure.
They just want to fit in.
Yes.
They don't want to stand out, and so being in feeling those things, how did that impact the development as you got through elementary school, junior high school, and the types of activities and things that you were involved in?
Yeah, I think you're just wanting to belong, right? And so I gravitated towards sports and being a part of a team and just having that core group of people that you can always, whether you hung out with them outside of the sport or not, you just always had a built-in group of friends. And that's what I genuinely say to my kids all the time, that any team that I'm coaching, I'm like, hey, this is a family. Like, if you think about it, you didn't choose to be with each other. You were just thrown together, just like in a real family. You don't get to choose who your siblings are or who your parents are, really, right? You just get thrown into it. And so if you think of it like a family, you have, like, look around. Most of you wouldn't want to associate with each other outside of this, period, or associate with each other anyways, right? Like, you were thrown in here, so you're with a diverse group of people that you wouldn't choose to be with. So make the most of it. Learn from kids that you wouldn't necessarily hang out with, get a different perspective on things, look how certain people do things, whether it's their work ethic or how they go about things. And so that helped me out a lot. It helped me to just belong. And like I said, it was probably sports was my outlet for everything really growing up.
You wrote on Father's Day on Instagram. Yeah.
Going deep dive here, huh?
Deep
On the
dive.
gram.
Recon.
Yes.
Well done.
So it was a picture of, I think, Tom, your dad.
Yep.
And it might have been your oldest. I can't remember. It was one of your sons.
Uh-huh.
They were sitting on his lap.
Uh-huh.
But you typed this quote. I believe that what we become depends on what our fathers teach us at odd moments when they aren't trying to teach us. We are formed by the little scraps of wisdom. Umberto Eco is who wrote that quote. Why did you write that quote about your father?
Just because I remember as I was growing up, like, jealous of you who had parents that, like, it seemed like you could talk to them about, anything.
Yeah.
Right? And so language barrier with my dad, not part of the culture necessarily that he grew up in. And so I always kind of not resented it, but just wished that I had, I think a parent that was like my best friend necessarily. And so, but as I grew up and appreciated what my dad did, the sacrifices that he made, and he didn't need to do that stuff, right? He just did it all by example. And so all the hard work and everything that he did and all the sacrifices just to make sure we were okay. And as I sit and I think back on it more and more, it's everything he did just for his kids.
Yeah.
Right? He's not doing that for himself. He's doing that all for us. And so that's why I put that. It's because he didn't say, hey, look at, like I told you before, he didn't say, look at me, I'm showing you how to do everything, and this is what you should do. He just did it, and we just sat there and we just said, hey, this is what it's like. Like, you wake up and you go to work. You don't complain about it. You don't, you're not trying to make excuses or say how terrible your life is or anything like that. He just did it, and I never heard him complain about anything ever.
Did you recognize that when you became a father, or was it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it was. I wish I would have recognized it a lot earlier, but yeah, as I got married and have my own kids and things like that, yeah, that's why you do things, right? You do everything for your kids and for your family.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember when we first met, and obviously it was
seventh grade.
It would have been 7th grade, right?
Uh-huh.
Maybe at some point you tried out for the basketball team.
Yes.
I attempted to try out for the basketball team. Do you remember what shorts I wore?
No.
I can only
I got
imagine.
a mental image, though.
Preston Stockton?
Yeah.
very much John Stockton. I couldn't find any shorts. Anyway, we won't go down that road. But that's probably where we first met. So, and I remember, basketball and soccer were your two things.
Yes.
Michael Jordan
Yep.
was your guy,
Yes.
right? The Bulls,
100%.
the
Yes.
the Bulls, Michigan,
Yes.
right? Those were those.
The
They're
big
probably
baggy shorts, Michigan. Yeah, still to this day.
yeah. Your Michigan shorts, I remember.
Chris
them.
Webber.
Yeah.
Chris Webber.
That was
is
your
my
guy?
Fab Five.
Yeah.
Jalen Rose.
Totally.
Those are my guys.
Yeah. And anyway, that's where we all kind of connected, and
Yes.
we became part of this friend group.
Oh
right?
yeah.
And
That's what I mean is I think one of the greatest things that happened to me, not greatest, but one of the best things that happened to me in junior high was I tried out for basketball. 7th grade, didn't make it. 8th grade, didn't make it. And I ended up making it 9th grade. And so that right there was just a big confidence boost for me as I think back on it. And, we see our kids in junior high, it's like the worst time of their lives, right? It's just so awkward,
Totally.
and you're just trying to fit in, find where you are in the world. And so that helped me a lot to find out where I was, because basketball was really my first love.
Yeah.
Like I used to always say, basketball, how did I phrase that? Basketball was my girlfriend, soccer was my wife, right? It was just like when you want to mess around and have fun, you go to your girlfriend, you know what I mean? But what pays the bills and everything like that, and everything you do, you go to the mainstay that's just always there. I just happen to be a lot better at soccer than I was at basketball. So.
Ashley, don't read into this.
Yeah,
too
don't
much.
read into it. It's just an expression, Ashley, if you ever see this. So I told her I was coming on. She's like, "Oh, I'd like to see that podcast." And I'm like, maybe you won't. We will have to edit that part out.
At the time, was that something that this was going to now kind of define you, if that makes sense? Like, this is my end. This
Yeah.
is something that I can be known for and do well here.
No, I always tried to push it, right? Like push it away. I didn't love, because none of my friends, none of Preston and I really played soccer, right? That was my thing. Basketball was something we all did together. So basketball was my big focus because that was where my friend group was, and soccer was just something that I did on the weekends when I wasn't with my friends and all that type of stuff. So I pushed it for a long time, and a lot of that is how I coach today. It's because when I look back on my soccer career, if you want to call it a career, it's a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of unused talent and a lot of and so when I coach, I try to. It's like my mindset, like, hey, I'm not going to let any of these kids waste any of the talent that they have or any of the opportunities that they have, because I know that I did, just because I wasn't in the right mindset. I didn't fully embrace it like I think I should have and could have, and I could have been a lot better than I was. And so, yeah, that's kind of helped shape my coaching philosophy a little bit, for better or worse, is I'm going to try and squeeze every ounce of everything from these kids, because I don't want them to be like me and look back and say, oh, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have worked harder. I wish I would have had a better attitude, that type of stuff. So, yeah.
At the time you were going through it, though, it actually makes sense to me based on your experience being raised and what you were going through, that you would prioritize just fitting in and having friends more than maybe even what you were good at, right? You wanted to be connected to people. And I think a lot of kids who may listen to this, that will resonate with them.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think that the majority of kids oftentimes are like, I would much rather be connected and hang with my friends than to necessarily go do the thing that I'm really talented at. That's something my parents yell at me over.
Oh, yeah.
That's not cool. I want to hang with my friends, you know? So.
No, exactly. And so I just thought of this. The reason I got into soccer was because of my dad.
Yeah.
Right? He played goalie, and I remember he played on a Laotian soccer team. And so every Sunday we would go to this park in Roy and have scrimmages and things like that. And so when I was about 10 or 11, they let me start to play. And so I think that's probably when I realized, hey, I might be decent at this game. And I remember my dad dragging me out in the backyard and take shots on him, and I hated it, right? Like, I would rather do something else. But that's what I mean is we sit back and we look at all those things, and we wish we would have like cherished them a little bit more, to be able to go back and be in that right mindset for hanging out with your dad, spending time with him, or just know what he was trying to do. You know, he was trying to help me maximize the talent that I had. So yeah.
Totally. Hindsight.
Yeah, no kidding. I
Exactly.
think we all have those regrets. Like,
Yeah,
of
for sure.
wish we would have done this better, dedicated more time to that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
know?
Did the mindset stay that way through junior high? It sounds like even into high school that you didn't necessarily want to focus on soccer, but did you play high school soccer or stay with soccer?
I
through
did. I stayed with soccer.
school team?
I tried out for basketball my sophomore year, didn't make it, right? Which was probably one of the biggest disappointments of that time for me, big time, because
Because you were on the 9th grade team.
I was on the 9th grade
Yeah.
team, and I just knew that I knew I was better than the kids that made it, right? Some of the kids that had made it, and so it was just devastating to me. And so that, again, a lot of those experiences that I had or disappointments that I had helped shape me who I am as a coach, because I wasn't going to play a political game when I ran tryouts, right? If a kid was good enough, maybe he wasn't on the best team or a certain club team or anything like that, I was going to pick the top kids regardless, or maybe they didn't dress a certain way or do those types of things. So that was my goal. Was I felt I should have made the basketball team my sophomore year, right? And so since I didn't, as I run tryouts and I run my team, I say, hey, I don't want to make it seem like that type of thing. But it's almost impossible, because, you know, whether you make the team or you don't, everyone always has an excuse, whether it's political or where it wasn't.
Right.
But if they're to sit in the room while we're picking these teams and doing these things, then they would know that, you know, for the most part, most all coaches are trying to pick the best team. And so I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what happened my sophomore year or whatever, but yeah, it's just interesting.
You played at Weber
Weber
State.
State, yeah.
You went to Weber State. How many years did you play on the soccer team there?
3 years, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you traveled a little bit with the soccer team, and
Yeah, I
did
went to
the whole deal?
Alabama several times, Texas, Penn State. We played California. So yeah, really good experiences, good times.
Yeah. What did you learn playing college soccer that maybe you use now with your high school teams?
College soccer was, we were just a club. It still is a club at Weber State, not Division I or anything. So we were just, you know, it was more just fun.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think the way that shaped how I coach is to emphasize those moments where you're not necessarily competing, but you are together as a group of kids, and just to enjoy each other's company. You know, the times, I couldn't tell you very many games specifically in college, but I could tell you the times we were just hanging out in the hotel, you know, or hanging out, going out at night with each other, and those were the memories that stayed with me. And so that's what I stress to these kids is, I think at Davis High we probably practice less than any team in the state, period, right? Because for the girls, I look at some of these other high schools, and granted, we're at Davis High, and generally we have a decent amount of talent. So it's, you know, I can have that luxury of not practicing necessarily, but even when we don't practice on Fridays, never on a Saturday, never during any holiday or spring break or anything. And because we're doing fun stuff instead. Like, we have a thing that I started there, Fun Fridays, where we're just doing a theme every week, right? So one is music video week. So throughout the week, they make music videos. We put them in groups, and they make music videos. They produce them. They do all of that. And then on Friday, we all get together, and we show them up on the projector, you know, see all the hard work, and they're just laughing and that type of stuff. We have synchronized swimming day, so they've got to get in groups and do a synchronized swimming routine.
And you're not in one of those
somewhere.
groups, right?
No, definitely not. Yeah, I wouldn't have to drown at synchronized swimming day. Or if they had to pull me out and do CPR, that'd be a little awkward, right? So
That is awesome.
or we do like a thrift shop day where $10, they go to the DI or Goodwill, and they got to come up with a fashion show outfit. So if you saw my Instagram,
Yeah.
one of them, I said, get me something, and one of them got a dress.
Uh-huh.
And so I had to do the runway walk on a dress. So just things like that, right? And so when these players come back and I hear from them, it's not necessarily about, we won or we lost necessarily. It's more, hey, I miss those fun Fridays. I miss those times with the team. And so that's what I got out of college is let's make it fun. Let's make it enjoyable. Number one, let's make it memorable for these kids.
Yeah, I know your Instagram account, if you're not following Souli, I mean, it's pretty entertaining because those Fun Friday posts.
Yes.
I think, I know my mom has talked to me about them, how funny they are. So surely there's a lot of other parents that are following, that are getting a kick out of what you're doing with their
Well,
kids.
hopefully they do.
Yeah.
So that's the big payoff. But yeah, I think, I think the wins and the losses, winning state championships is awesome and cool. But I make sure I tell the kids, I'm like, hey, it's a Friday. It doesn't seem like we're at practice, but that's more important than any practice we'll ever have because that's you guys bonding and that's you guys enjoying each other's company, and that will carry on to the field.
Did you just share your secret sauce?
There you go. Yeah,
is
it
that
is.
It?
Yeah, if coaches are willing to do that, I would say go and do it. And not because of me, but I see a lot of other teams doing more team building type stuff.
Yeah,
and which I think is awesome because that's what you need.
Yeah.
Before we go deep dive into coaching,
I know
I'm so intrigued about some of these philosophies and things. I think it's awesome. But tell us a little bit about college years. What you were studying. Career, what you were thinking that way, and maybe how that dovetails into getting married and starting a family.
Yeah, it's strange, not strange, but it's interesting to look back at being from an immigrant family. I don't want to keep harping on it, but it's really what shaped who I am and whatnot. But it was never. I had no idea how to go to college, right? I had no idea the process because nobody had ever done it before me, and so it was more. It was expected, but nobody told me how to do it. So everything you're just learning on your own, like how to apply for a college, how to get in, how to do any of those other things. And so I just knew in my mind that that's what I was going to do, was go to college and graduate. I didn't even know what I wanted to be, like everybody, a doctor at first and then pre-law. And that's what I got into at Weber State was a lot of pre-law type stuff, so a lot of social studies things. And then on the side, I was substitute teaching, right? And so I'd interact with these kids, and it was fun. And I just thought, I know I wouldn't make a lot of money, but number one, I'm having a lot of fun interacting with these kids and just, enjoying them, and it's never dull or anything. So maybe I could be a teacher. And stability was a big thing, right? So it's one of the most stable jobs you can have is being a teacher, as long as you don't touch the kids or the money, right? Then you're good. So, which are the two rules we have as a high school
low
teacher,
bar.
Right? Yeah.
I love this.
Then you're probably good, right? So yeah. So when I was like, hey, what should I teach? English, or I had a bunch of social study credits, and I was always very interested in history. So that's how I became a history teacher, basically.
You're probably the most well-read of all of our friends, right? In terms of like quotes and like, if you had to phone a friend and needed help on a question, I mean, Souli was the guy to go to.
Like useless knowledge, trivial knowledge.
Maybe,
right over there.
maybe,
Trivia.
but your quote game was super strong.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and it always has been, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
Why? I mean, you love to read.
Yeah.
I think you read. You have tons of books.
Yes.
Maybe share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I just like knowing about different things and being as well-rounded as possible, right? And so, obviously, sports interests me, but politics and government and all these other things. So I never want to be in a room where there's a conversation going on and I have no idea what's going on, And so that's what kind of has driven me to just be as well-rounded as possible, learn about different things, learn about different point of views, and I make sure I tell that to my students too, that there's a different perspective to everything. And so I tell them, like on my Twitter or whatever, I follow tons of people that I do not that I absolutely hate, and that I do not align with their beliefs, but I want to know where they're coming from. I want to know why they think the way they think. And so yeah, just to try and gain as much knowledge all around, instead of just in one specific field or anything like that, I think is great.
And I think all of that, you're also the strongest debater
Yeah.
in our group,
Yeah.
right? You could take either side of the argument and probably talk circles around all of us. Like whenever we would get in arguments or disagreements, or
Yeah.
whether it was a sport
Yeah.
topic or government topic or maybe even a religious topic,
Yes.
you were prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, just because I love playing devil's advocate, I guess, and that's kind of my nature, to be the opposing view on whatever it is, right? And it just makes for more fun, I think, in any type of discussion instead of everybody agreeing with whatever's going on. Yeah.
I got to think you challenge your students now in a lot of ways that maybe they don't get challenged because of what you do.
Yes, and history is such a interesting subject in that it's all about perspective, right? Like they don't learn about the American Revolution the same as we do in England, right? And so they learn it from a totally different perspective. And so if you can take yourself and put it, if you can, take yourself and put it there and understand where they're coming from and why they did things that they did, then I think when you form your own views, then you can be confident of those views and, be able to express them better, I think.
Yeah.
Why does that matter? I'm intrigued a little bit to double click on that. Like, what is it about reading and knowledge and understanding other people's perspectives that is important to you?
Well, I just think that, I don't know necessarily. It's hard to articulate because I just think I think it's vital to being a better human being, right? If you know that whatever someone's going through, whatever it may be, whether, politically or what they are in their lives, then I think you'll treat them differently, right? If you can put yourself in their place and say, hey, this person you don't like, but you put them in your place and say, oh, I can see why they would act like that or have the beliefs that they have. I just think it helps you just be better and understand people and where they're coming from a lot easier.
It feels like, sorry, Tom, it feels like based on your upbringing and maybe some of the experiences you had on the playground,
Sure.
like you want to make sure everyone knows that they matter, that their point of view matters.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what you look like or what you think, you still matter. And I care about that, and I want to understand that.
Yeah.
And you probably wish people would have maybe treated you that way.
Oh, for sure.
And, now you're living it your own way.
Yeah, for sure. Especially in the climate that we live in today, right? Where you're trying to be, as inclusive as possible, and some people are trying to be exclusive, right? And so I don't think because whether you agree or disagree with somebody, you should necessarily not want them to be happy and to be comfortable. I just, like I said, I think it all boils down to just being a good human being. I think if you try and be a good human being, you would try and learn what they are, where they come from, and learn something about them.
I think that's amazing because I think for a lot of people, they view becoming a good human being means going further into who they were raised to be or how they were raised. I mean, just hearing you describe that you follow a bunch of people that you hate, I mean, we kind of joke about that, but in our kind of day and time, you can set your news channel, all of your social media, you can literally surround yourself and isolate yourself to reinforce exactly who you are in your beliefs.
100%.
And very quickly you can go, anything other than that is wrong. And I'm not really open to even understanding their point of view. And so I think that's an incredible viewpoint that you intentionally will actually follow and listen to people who you don't necessarily like.
Yeah. 100%. It's you got to know where they're coming from. And it doesn't mean you need to agree with it, but like you said, knowing that person that you disagree with 100%, at least you can, intelligently understand a little bit of what they're going through.
Sure.
So, yeah. I don't know if that makes any sense. Kind of.
I think it's rare, but I love it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I love that philosophy. That I tend to want to read and be informed as well, partially. Preston alluded to it, but I didn't have the same playground experience you did, but I had the experience growing up where ADHD, reading disability, learning disability, you add all that together, and it was like I had a huge chip on my shoulder
Yeah.
for kids who can just come and learn, and it all worked out for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've carried that into my adulthood, which I want to get to at some point with you, how you carried all these chips or experiences, from your childhood growing up into now what you're doing, which in my opinion, to a certain extent, you're now standing in front of hundreds of kids a year. You're coaching at the highest level. It's the ultimate, like, yeah, I got this.
Yeah.
Despite where I came from, I'm now impacting people and kids in a significant way in an area where at one point I wasn't necessarily loved and embraced.
Sure.
And now you're the man.
I don't know if I'm the man.
I would bet if we got on Instagram and started calling girls on your teams from the past, I bet you many of them would say, he's a man. And I just think that's cool. I think that your development allowed you to bring passion to and have a desire to try to make a different outcome and to teach people to approach people maybe like yourself growing up differently.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think being diverse in whatever you do, whether it's knowledge or helping those that are of a different background than you, can only help everybody, right? So you got people that are thinking differently, people that approach things differently, whether it's something like in a classroom where you have different opinions on what's going on, or whether you're on a soccer team and you have different ways of training or different ways of getting better, right? And seeing the game, I think can only help, right? You're getting different points of view and different perspectives, and as a team or in a classroom, I think that's the best. That's the best way and the best environment to learn anything and to get better.
Would you rather be in a classroom or on a soccer field? Coaching or teaching?
And money, was it an issue? Or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I would probably
is
rather.
it more? What's more rewarding, maybe, for you?
That's a great question. I think it's rewarding in different ways. I'm not trying to skirt it, but if I had to pick, I'd say classroom. I became a teacher to teach. I only coached because I wanted to be a teacher, right? And so I was never in it to, and I don't think it's spoiler alert, but because I've told a lot of people, but I'm towards the end of my coaching career. I never wanted to be a lifer and coach for 30, 40 years just because, it's a grind and it can affect you mentally and obviously physically and things like that. So I only started coaching in high school because it just helped me get my foot in the door.
Yeah.
There wasn't a big demand for history teachers because usually those teachers die in that job, right? They're like 80. You can think back on your history teachers that you had at Layton and all, right?
Yeah.
And even at Davis. And so, yeah, so it was hard to get your foot in the door. But once you can say you can coach and do an extracurricular activity, then they're like, oh, they give you a little bit of a preference. So that's initially why I started coaching and ended up loving it. And as long as I'll teach, I'll coach for the most part. And yeah, eventually I'd like to get into administration. I have my master's in administration to be a principal or an admin that way. So, yeah, but when that time comes, it'll be great, and I'll miss the coaching at the high school level and all of that. But yeah, it was never, hey, I want to coach, because you have those teachers. I think that if you think about in high school, that they're the coach first and the teacher second or something like that. And I never wanted to be that, right?
Yeah.
And maybe, my students argue it is the other way, but for the most part, teaching is my passion. And coaching has been developed as well. But teaching was the real reason why I got into what I'm doing,
Yeah.
for sure. So I would say in the classroom.
No, that's great. Do you have a thought?
I just wanted to, maybe take that a little bit further because
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to know, we tend to think about the coaching and the teaching is different things. Obviously, you're in a different location, but
Mm-hmm.
how much translation one to the other is happening? I mean, the best coaches I feel like are fantastic teachers.
For sure. And there is 100% overlap. You think, one of the best coaches I know is his name's Sir Alex Ferguson, coached Manchester United, and he was a PE teacher, right? He was a teacher before he was a coach, and so, like you said, it's a huge overlap, right? Being able to paint a picture for your players, getting them to, understand the why of what you're doing and the tactics of soccer. There's a lot of tactics or like a strategy, I guess you'd say, into what you're doing. And so if you can articulate that to your players, just like in a classroom, if you can articulate the cause and the why and get them to think on their own, then they'll be better students and better players as well.
I've got to think if I sat in your history class, your world history class, and some other random high school history class, yours is going to be remarkably different.
Yes.
And what do you do? What's different about it?
Well, I think education's evolved a little bit into what we're doing. So you kind of go with the times a little bit, but it might sound bad. And I tell my students this the very first day. I said, my bar is not very high for you guys, right? I just don't want you to hate history when you're done with my class. Because when I think back on my history classes when I was in high school, I don't remember a lot, period. I don't remember a lot of the facts. I don't remember a lot of the things. I just remember how I felt when I was in that class.
Yeah.
Right. And I remember that I liked my teacher. It was an interesting subject. And I said, hey, if you want to like learn a lot more and go deep into it, good on you, but you're probably in the minority here, right? So you have a lot of other things you should be doing in your life, like social life or other extracurriculars. So my philosophy is just to create an environment where the kids are safe and they like coming to class, right? And the history, it sounds bad, is secondary to all of that. Because if they hate history and they hate my class, they're never going to learn or never want to pick up a book and read or listen to anything as they get older, when we tend to read and learn about things, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to do in my class is give them the time to socialize with their friends while they're doing their work, not put hard deadlines on them and not put a lot of stress on them necessarily, and just, like I said, create this environment where they don't hate coming to my class. And if you think about all the teachers and the class that you really liked, you probably liked them because you liked the teacher, right? Or didn't hate the teacher. You could have loved math, but if you hated the teacher, you weren't going to be into the math, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of what is probably a little bit different with my class. Like, I let my kids have cell phones all the time. I try not to be a cell phone Nazi or anything like that. And we're playing music the whole time while they're doing their work. They're talking with each other, circulating, talking to kids, not about history, but about, what are you doing this weekend? Or what do you got going on in your life type of thing. And so I think that's where my class is a little bit different. I know some other teachers do that as well, which they're great and fantastic. But I think the subject matter is secondary to how the kid feels while they're in your class. So that's kind of like my teaching philosophy.
Yeah. I think that's amazing because obviously this being Brain Stoke, in the podcast is really mental health driven, learning from others, and their own stories. But as you interact with the students in class, and we can talk more about this too on the field as a coach, but what are you recognizing in, your students' lives in today, just in general, about how they're doing mentally, what you're recognizing, what you're seeing? Because what you just described is that you're allowing connection to happen.
Yes.
And in a time frame that we all see in the mental health world, that connection is lacking in a significant way.
Mhm.
So to do it in school in a safe environment, it's interesting that you've kind of caught on to that and that that's become your strategy or coaching way to get kids to, to learn and to do well in that setting.
Yeah, I think if you want to go back to psychology and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you got to take care of the belonging and all those things below before you can even think about learning. And so if you take care of the safety type stuff, safety and being in class, being accepted, then they're going to be more willing to learn or just even feel good about themselves.
Feels like your class might be their safe space
Yes.
or their place that they're like super comfortable.
Yeah.
Where they are really become, they feel like they can be themselves. They can maybe relax. I don't know.
No, that's you always have that one. I remember you always think back to your days, and you always have the teacher like, hey, if I weren't going to my one class that I hate, what classroom would I go to, or what teacher would I go to, or if I have downtime, where am I going to go? And so, I take pride a lot of times, and that's my class, right?
Yeah.
I'll have kids come in randomly and say, hey, can I hang out here? Can I do my homework here? Or study for this test because I don't want to go to class? And I'm like, yeah, this is it, And so it sometimes becomes a bit of a zoo, but I wouldn't want to have it any other way because, those kids aren't out, doing something they shouldn't be doing. They're in your classroom, and you're just developing a relationship with them and helping them feel like, hey, you are valued and you belong.
What do you do when? So I'm assuming kids are also, they'll open up to you and probably talk to you about things they're not going to talk to other teachers about because
Sure.
they know you are a safe space.
Yes.
So how do you like, what are some of the things you'll share with them when they're sharing with you they're frustrated with mom or dad or their friend group or whatever? Like,
Yeah.
I assume you hear that probably daily.
Yes. No, you hear it a lot, and you're not trying to be their parent, right? You're just, like you said, it always goes back to, you just try and get them to think a different way because you get so focused on this is how I'm thinking. I don't like my parents, or I hate, whatever is going on in my life. And you try and get them to think out here a little bit, let them kind of understand where their parents are coming from.
Yeah.
And so one time I actually just had lunch with this girl just got home off her mission. Great relationship with her. And so I remember she's having problems with like, oh, I don't like my parents. They're so this, they're yelling at me, or, they're putting too much pressure on me to get a scholarship, to play soccer, or do any of these other things, or they're yelling at me when I'm on the field. And I remember saying, hey, my parents were never able to make it to my games because they were working. And you are blessed to have your parents come to your games and support you. Think about that a little bit instead of thinking about, them yelling at you on the field or wherever else they're coming from. Just think about someone that doesn't, and I can say, hey, you can go talk to your parents. Unfortunately, it was difficult for me to be able to do that, right? And so think about that a little bit. And so it just helps them to, I just try and get them, like, I'm not going to tell them to go against whatever their parents are saying or any of that type of stuff, right? I'm just trying to get them to think just a little bit differently about their problem, and maybe that'll help them out.
Love it. Yeah, love it.
For sure, you're letting them rock T Swift in the classroom.
Oh, that's all we rock, basically. In my classroom.
But what can't? So what's the no? Hey, turn that off. Johnny in the back, no.
Well,
T Swift, but not. What is that? What's the no fly zone in your class?
No, I just say the very first day I'm saying, hey, there is a big rule. There'll be no Taylor Swift slander in this classroom. Like, if you don't like her, that's fine. You just keep it to yourself. Because that's what we're playing in this classroom, right? It's on the speakers. It's going around. You can put in your headphones. You can listen to whatever you want to, but you don't say it out loud if you don't like her.
Where did this come from, man? Here's
the story I tell my kids.
What is the T Swift OCD?
I remember when I first heard her, I was driving. Remember the clicky wheel iPods that you used to have in your car?
Yeah.
Way back in the day. So I was driving down the road, and I was wheeling through, and I see this name Taylor Swift. No idea who it was. Right? I didn't put it on there, and you guys know. It was hard to put music on those iPods back in the day. You didn't have Bluetooth. You couldn't stream
I love
that
that
sucker,
you just called
right?
it the click you feel.
Yeah.
And I'm picturing doing this.
Yeah, exactly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So my wife is very technologically challenged, so she didn't put it on there. I'm like, who is this? I thought it was a dude. Who is this dude on my iPod, and who put it there? So I'd keep scrolling through there. So one day I was just like, I'm going to see who this is and what this dude is about. I thought it was a guy on American Idol, right? This was like 2008 or something. And so I clicked on it. It was Our Song by Taylor Swift. I clicked on it and immediately just fell in love with the song. And I went home right away, illegally downloaded, like on Napster, all of her songs. And then that was it. I don't know if in a former life I was a teenage girl or whatever, but it was speaking to me, right?
Yeah.
And so,
You're just you.
yeah.
You're not
that
a
is
teenage
me.
girl,
Yeah,
bro.
this is-
I'm with you.
I'm
I
just
feel
doing
like
my
we're
thing.
T Swift brothers.
Yes, for sure. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's what yesterday, I have a game tomorrow against our rival, Layton, right? Davis versus Layton. I will not be there because I will be at the Taylor Swift concert or en route, right? And I gathered the boys around a little tongue in cheek to tell them
Maslow's
this.
needs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I gather the boys around and I just said, hey, life's all about priorities, right? And if you have your priorities set, it's easy to make decisions, right? Where does this thing rank on my priorities? And I said, if you've seen my Instagram, you know my priorities are God, family, Taylor Swift. That's it. and so I said, I will not be at the game tomorrow because two of those three things I'm doing tomorrow, maybe the third, because I'm sure the Spirit's going to be there as well. So all three of my priorities are going to be covered.
Oh,
and so
man.
I apologize.
That's
but
not
I'm-
even a question.
Yeah, I'm
the
taking
third
my
is
daughter.
absolutely there.
Yes. So I'm taking my daughter. I have a chance to go. And I just let them know, like, hey, family is first, above anything and everything that we do. And that's how I make my choices, right? So, but yeah, Taylor Swift. is
Okay.
just
Okay. So
amazing.
this takes us to the next question then.
Okay.
State championship, or I don't know if do we go front row to Taylor Swift?
Oh.
Because I know if I say backstage
is it
passes,
going to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
state
It's
championship or
easily
winning it?
backstage.
yeah, if backstage passes, it's Bex that will win. So
Oh,
if
for
it's
sure.
front row to Taylor, are you going to the state championship game? Or are you?
I would say, I hate to even say this. But
Uh-oh.
I would say state championship. And the only reason I would say that is because more people are involved. It's
Yeah,
not just
it's going to
me,
impact
right?
more people.
It's
Yeah.
going to have everybody, and that's my why, right? You know what I mean? Like you see all of these people that have worked so hard for a thing, and I also tell my players, I'm like, if you look back on the state championship that won, you'll be hard pressed to find me in any of those pictures, right? Just because it's not about me or anything. It's about the kids. And so I'm just in the background and I'm just enjoying the celebration and enjoying those kids. I'm trying to create these core memories with what these kids look like when they've accomplished something that they've, always wanted to accomplish. And so I'm not in the pictures with the trophies all the time and any of that type of stuff because, I would rather see them win it than anything. And I've been fortunate enough to win some, and so I don't necessarily need to win any more than I already have, except for I want them to just experience what I was fortunate enough to be able to experience.
Yeah.
And to feel that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's great.
That says, a lot about you, but I'm intrigued to go a little bit more into the coaching thing. So I think it's a rare man who has the ability to coach girls, to coach women, and to do that at a high level. And, my daughter plays soccer. She's now out of high school, but she played on a comp team, and her two coaches had daughters who played on the team. And so in the beginning, I'm like, well, these guys are obviously, they're coaching because their daughters are there. But these coaches stayed with them from the time they were 7 all the way through high school on their comp team. And, it was rarely about winning. They truly love these girls and built some amazing women. It's actually remarkable, to see that, but it's rare. I've coached other sports too. It's rare that you see men do well coaching girls. So tell us how you got into coaching girls and then how you've been able to thrive at such a high level, because it's remarkable.
Yeah, I remember I interviewed for the Davis High coaching job, and it was the men's job, the boys' job, right? And as a side, when I was in there, like, this is for the girls too, right? And I'm like, no, I didn't, but okay. And I'm fine with that, right? I'd never really coached girls before. It was always on the boys' side. And so, I think that it's different. Coach, I get asked all the time, what's different, or what do you like more, one or the other? And to be honest, I don't really coach them any differently. It's you coach them the same, because I think you're doing a disservice if you coach one way and one or the other. It's just how you go about, doing certain things when you do it. If that makes any sense. Like, our Fun Fridays are a little bit different with the boys and with the girls. The boys would just rather hang out, play video games, or do something like that, right?
The girls embrace it a little bit
And
more.
the girls are like, we want to do something different, something fun, and get out there and be active. And the boys like, hey, we just want to chill and hang out with each other, type of thing. So, but now I think that that's what I'm known more as, coaching the girls than for the boys. And I think it's being able to create that environment necessarily, but not like when I, if you're at one of my games or anything, I'm pretty hard nosed with these girls, right? And so I say this all the time, I'm not a cheerleader coach at all. Like, you make a mistake, I'll let you know, and then we move on. And I think that a lot of that goes back to why we do Fun Fridays and why we do all these other things, is because if these kids know that you kind of, care about them and really want to know about them and their lives, or things outside of what they're doing besides soccer, then you can almost coach them however you want to coach them, right? And so, but yeah, it was just by mistake that I do it, and now that's basically what I do. The only boys coach I really coach, teams that I coach are the high school boys, and now it's in club all girls, and all that. And I think that girls a lot of times, I'm trying to be sexist or any of this type of stuff, but they're so appreciative of when you teach them something, right? And they're so receptive right away to the coaching that you do. I think you do more coaching on the girl side, tactically, strategy-wise, and even individually, than you do on the boys. The boys, you just kind of, they get the game a little bit, they watch it, and so I'm more managing them than with the girls. And so in a way, it's a little bit more rewarding, right? You see it right away. You say, hey, you give them a coaching point, tell them what to do, and then you see it right away, and that's rewarding. On the boys' side, it seems like sometimes you're fighting ego a little bit more. Does this guy know what he's doing? Or before it sinks in into what they're doing, so it's not as immediate as the girl side. And so, but yeah, I love doing both. But like I said, on the girl side, if I had to choose, it'd be on the girl side, just because of those, just because of it being a bit more rewarding and having more of an impact.
You alluded to it, but you said you're pretty hard on them.
Mm-hmm.
The rumor is you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
And what what is the value of getting after them when they make a mistake?
I am really hard, but a lot of times it's strategic as to what I am, because I want them in practice or whenever they're doing it, that when they get out there and they face an opponent, it's going to be easier than what I'm going to put them through.
Yeah.
Right? Mentally and or in every type of way possible. But I let them know right away when they do something wrong, and then we move on. Right? It's never personal. It's never at all any of those types of things. But I think the reward of getting after them is like I said, when I was a player, there was a lot of things I would have done differently, and talent wise and hard work wise. And I don't want them to waste it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want them to look back and to regret, oh man, I wish I would have been pushed harder. I wish I would have worked harder. And I think that's my job a little bit, is to make them do those things or help them to get there.
Did you feel like your high school coaches pushed you? Do you remember getting pushed, or was it?
Well, a lot of it was, I'm not blaming my high school coaches or anything like that. A lot of it was my attitude and my focus in on it, right? And so I think being like coaching them hard, but knowing that, you can be hard on them, but then afterwards you have a conversation with them, you talk to them, you know that, hey, this is not about you as a person, it's about you as a player type of thing. And so, yeah, I think that I think in high school, a lot of the way I was coached in high school has definitely shaped what I am, just because, like I said, I didn't want anything to go to waste, right? And I take pride in my teams getting the most out of the talent that they have.
Yeah.
And especially in a state championship setting, because, you play at Rio Tinto, it's huge. They can't hear what I'm saying anyways, right? But they're going to hear it in their minds.
Yeah.
When I say it, I've had a player even say, I was like, one of my favorite players, just because I've known her for so long, is playing professionally right now for the Orlando Pride, right? Kayla Coulihan. And so she'll come back all the time, and she's like, I'll hear your voice in my head, even to this day, when I'm out there playing and something happens, I'll hear your voice in my head because you didn't take it easy on me and you didn't do these types of things. So people,
clearly, when you apply that principle about yourself, you wanted more.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, just even though your demeanor now, like the way you coach, the way that you teach, how you live your life, clearly you have wanted to not regret.
Exactly.
Right? And that's what you're now teaching. And so, I feel like, as a kid who was an underachiever to a certain extent growing up, when I look back on my high school years, in my head, I'm not thinking, I wish I would have had more fun.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I wish I would have achieved what my potential was.
Sure.
And so I
Well,
don't
that's
know,
a good
that
point.
is an interesting exercise to go
is.
through.
Exactly.
I think that for a lot of kids, they probably feel like they wish they would have, for those who are really, their parents may be driving them to get perfect grades, or they probably would study less. But in terms of, wanting more fun over accomplishing what their potential was in sports or, other parts of school, I don't know how many kids would take that outcome.
Yeah.
No,
for sure.
living with regret is not awesome.
No, it is not. And so that, and I don't think you can 100% take that away, but I don't ever want to look back on a season and think, man, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that, as opposed to, I take pride in the teams we're not as talented. I mean, we don't win it all, but we overachieve a little bit, right? As opposed to the ones where I think we underachieve and you sit back and you think and ponder about, hey, should I have done this more or should I have done that more, type of thing. So, yeah, regret's not great at all. It's not a great feeling.
Talk about parents.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I'm fascinated with your winning record and all that you've done. I'm almost more intrigued how you managed parents along the way, because I have a lot of friends who are in Dartland as parents.
Yes.
These are not people who are like chilling in the stands, getting a tan.
No.
They're like screaming at coaches and they're starting text threads, take Souli out and whoop on him type stuff. I mean,
for sure.
I don't, not in reality. I mean, you have an incredible reputation, but parents are hard as crap, man.
Oh,
So
yeah.
how you doing that?
I'm guessing
you're
there's
just trying
some
to
rule.
manage.
There's got to be some rule. Like,
No, I think early on in my career with Davis High, the girls were pretty successful early on. Just could never win a state championship. But the boys, one of the hardest years I've ever had coaching was my first year with the boys, because I think they were in the semifinals the year before I got there, returning everybody, and we just were bad, right? I think we lost in the second round of the playoffs when they were expected to win it all. And so you had parents coming for my head big time, even though the girls had won region. they only lost a couple games all year, and it was difficult, right? And so I think me personally, and for my own mental health and everything, is you're never as good as you think you are. You're never as bad as people think you are, right? As well, especially parents. And so as long as you can kind of keep that mindset, I think it helps you out a little bit. And so I think the success has helped, because whatever these parents say, you can always just point to, hey, we've been successful. I kind of know what I'm doing, right? And so what do you have to say there? But getting to that point is difficult. That's why you see a lot of, turnover. The turnover rate is huge in coaches and in certain schools as well. But
is it progressively getting worse in terms of just our generations, maybe of parents who,
for sure,
the success or lack thereof of their children is a reflection on them, and it's hard for them to handle.
Yeah, 100%. When parents try to live their lives through their kids and vicariously through their kids and their success or lack thereof, then those are the ones that do it. The ones that, if they went back in time and everyone could see them in high school, they weren't as good as they say that they were, right? They weren't all state, or they weren't all region or whatever. And then their kids come up and they play and they push their kids to be all of those things when they're probably not.
Their regret has become the way that they parent.
Yeah,
they're emotionally
exactly.
connected to and tied to the success of their child because it wasn't their.
Yeah, one of my
their
favorite
story.
pictures is Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, and a couple other parents that play for Barcelona. They're watching their kids play a game, and they are just sit back on their lawn chairs, relaxed, barely watching the game, just giggling and talking with each other while their kids are out there playing. Because these guys aren't living through their kids. They're not going to go question those coaches, especially youth coaches, when their kids are really young, or ask them why their kid's not playing, because they get it, right? And so I think if more parents could kind of get that, then that would be great. I joke around and I don't want to be, offend my own kids, but none of my kids are necessarily athletic. And so even if they were, I would never, I just can't imagine trying to do that. So the third, Boston, plays soccer. He's not on a good team, right? And so he was playing on a rec team, and they were going to go to competition soccer. But he clearly wasn't good enough, right? All the other kids were more athletic and everything, but they invited him to be on it. And so I called the coach and I said, hey, you don't have to invite my kid just because he's on here. Like, if he's not good enough, then I get it, I can see that he's not. And they're like, no, we want him here. Hopefully he develops. And I just said, hey, you'll never hear a word out of me, period, on whether he will play or whether he won't play. Because if he's not good enough, or if he doesn't do it, then that's him. And I get it, because I am a coach. And so that doesn't mean it was easy. Like, he'd be playing games and, he's like 7 or 8 at the time. And to me, my philosophy is you play those kids as much as possible. But he's playing in a game, in a tournament, he's playing 2 minutes. He's that kid that goes in, comes right back out. And it's difficult, but, but like, as a parent, if you can just sit there and you're like, these coaches aren't there to make your kid feel bad. They're there to, they're not getting paid a lot or doing anything. And so, again, it's that perspective thing. You put yourself in their shoes and you're seeing how they're making the decisions, then I don't think you're going to go after coaches, or you're not going to call them about your kids' playing time. You got to tell your kids. And my wife would complain, and I'm like, honey, he's not out there in the backyard working hard enough. Like, if he wants to get to a certain level, he's got to get there, and he's got to put in the work. Now, if he's out there working really hard and I see him developing and then he's not playing, and he probably should, from my perspective, then I'll say something, but I'm never going to. But even then, I probably wouldn't, So it's just, you got to put in the work, and you got to be realistic about what your kids can and cannot do. And like I said, if you can kind of just think about what that coach is going through and so forth, then I think it'll help you out big time as a parent.
As a coach, it's pretty obvious who's putting in the work.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
Yes.
you've got the eye to
Oh yeah, it's
identify
100%
that
obvious,
pretty
and
easily.
that's what I mean. Is it's not like you're playing your kid. I think as a parent, you sit there and you think your kid doesn't play. The coach does not play your kid, and it's personal. They always think it's personal.
Yeah.
He doesn't like my kid. He doesn't like her. He doesn't like them, and so forth. But it's never personal. You know, at least for me, it's not. And so if your kid isn't playing, it's not because I don't like them. It's because they need to be better, right? Or give the coach what they want, and so forth. So
there's something we haven't talked about yet tonight, and
Okay.
we need to talk about it. Is you as a father and as a family man.
okay,
I mean, your family is just above T Swift.
yes,
Right?
just above,
Just above. But we know, I mean, your family is everything to you.
Mm-hmm.
How has your upbringing, your parents, how has that all shaped you as a father, as a parent,
Yeah.
and probably as a husband too?
Yeah. You know, you can get some difficulties from there, but one of the things that I did before I get into that, one of the things that I rarely heard, and it's not like I'm saying I wish I would have heard it more or anything like that. It's just cultural. I rarely heard, like, I could probably count on one hand how many times I heard my parents say, "I love you," right? Love. Just because it wasn't a part of their culture. And so that to me had a profound impact. Every time I see my kids, I say it, right? And I make sure they know it. Not because I don't think my parents didn't. It's just because I think it's great to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's helped. That's one of the things. And it's difficult though, right? Because if you were never used to talking to your parent, it's hard for you to switch. It's kind of hard to get and to switch that around and always talk to your kids. So that's something I'm battling big time, is having these interactions with my kids that I never had with my parents.
And it's probably something we should clarify. Your parents spoke Laotian in the home.
Yes.
But you grew up really learning English in school.
Correct.
And so
Yeah.
you didn't have a great grasp of Laotian,
No.
right?
No. Like,
Yeah.
I understood it a little bit and so forth, but yeah, English was definitely my first language. It wasn't theirs. And
Mhm.
so, but even then it's like, you're not super affectionate, period.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
so, and that's what I mean is that's why I don't sit that, and I was never resentful of that fact for my parents. I just knew that that's the situation we were, right? And it's more cultural than anything. And so, but now that I'm a parent, I just want to make sure all the time that that's the case. And now with me to my parents, I tell them that all the time as well, And
Mhm.
so
You
I just
tell
wanna make
them,
sure-
"I love you," or
I love you.
"Koi hak jiao."
I love you. Well, if I said it, they'd be like, "That's the wrong tone." You're probably saying something like, because
Tom,
that word "koi" could mean
I know.
I, and you know what else it could mean? It
Yeah.
could mean penis, So
Look at
depending
you.
on how you say it,
I
right?
said, "I love you" in Laotian.
yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm struggling with, especially as my kids are teenagers and stuff now, is getting more comfortable having, like sitting there and talking with my kids and making sure they're comfortable
Yeah.
talking with me about it. But it's hard, when your upbringing's a certain way. You always say, I'm going to do things different when I'm a parent, but that's generally not the case, right? You a lot of times end up being what your parents were. So you've got to like consciously think, hey, I've got to make a big effort to do these certain things that I promised myself I would when I was a parent. or
It
when I
feels
was a
like
parent.
music and concerts is one of those ways you build core memories with your kids.
Oh, for sure.
Like you're always
Yes.
you're always chasing a concert somewhere, and one of your kids is always with you,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And so, yeah, that's what it is. It's just a way to relate to them or with them and, get them to see me outside of, I think you act differently when you're around in those different settings, and they can see me a little bit differently because I get it. I can be, even with my kids and with my players, a bit intimidating into what I am and my demeanor a bit. So when my daughter or my son, we can go to concerts and just spend that quality time together. It's I think it's great for both of us, and they can see, hey, you develop that hangout type situation with your kids, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
Dad's cool.
Yeah.
Dad's a cool guy.
Yeah. Hopefully, right?
Do you tend to default with them, just communicating with them? Do you default to coach guy, just kind of directing traffic versus,
Well, definitely when I was teaching one of the worst things you can do is teach your kids how to drive, right? So, My son he just barely got his license, not that long ago. Like I'm talking weeks ago, and there was a point where we reached where he would not drive with me in the car, just because I would turn to coach mode, right?
Right.
And so, and that's one of the things I struggle with, and that's what I tell my teams is I'm like, when I'm giving information, I only have one tone of voice, and it's loud, and it sounds like I'm very upset, right? But if you take away the tone, it's just the information that you have. So if I were telling my wife, yelling something to her like, hey, Ashley, it'll sound the same as me saying F you to somebody, right? There's no difference in the tone, and I cannot change the tone. And so I have to have that discussion.
That a cultural thing?
No, I have no idea. It might just be a Souli thing. Or my dad thing, I think, more or less. But I have that conversation with each one of my teams. Like, I'm like, hey, if you take what I say and if you take how I say something personally, like it's cutting to your heart, then you're going to struggle on this team because it is just information. I will say, great job, the same way I say, what are you doing, right? And it's the exact same tone. You just have to take the information, right? Because I can't change that tone, dude. If I try to, my voice will crack and do all this other type of stuff. I just can't do that. And my wife has learned that as well, right? Like we're trying to learn that. We learned that through our marriage also, that my tone doesn't change any of those things. And so she actually, the only games she comes to in high school are the state championship games because she hates to watch me coach because it's just too intense for her.
Really?
And so forth, yeah.
It's because she knows the frustration you're dealing with as the coach. Like she's
that
feeling
and the tone, right?
Yeah.
The
You know what I mean?
bark.
Yeah, the
The
bark.
Souli
exactly.
bark.
Yeah,
He's like,
exactly. That's
so
what it
mean
is.
to
And
the
she's like,
kids.
She'll say, I can't. I don't even understand why anybody wants to play, or to do any of these types of things, But she's not an athlete, right? So she was never into that. She danced and stuff, so it's a whole different world for her, necessarily.
Yeah.
Than it is.
I think you just gave a trade secret away, though, a little bit that I think is brilliant because you described setting expectations for how you communicate
yes.
before you actually do it.
Yes.
And I think I see it in youth coaches. I see it, my kids' teams, even my own friends, the way that they coach, that they will do the loud barking, but they won't set the expectations up front that isn't cutting into your heart. That's not how I feel about you as a human. And as a result, I think that halfway through the first game of the season, half of their kids have shut down emotionally.
Sure.
They're just like, my coach hates me.
Yeah.
And of course, what they're going to say when they get home is, my coach hates me. He doesn't like me at all. And now it's like this political blame game versus just maybe it was just that you miscommunicated with your people. And so it's as simple as that is a universal thing in coaching and business and families, whatever, that just being able to communicate with people about how you communicate is so key.
Yes. And trust me, I've tried to change that tone. I just can't. And so it's just like, hey, I want to be upfront with you guys about how this works so that you're not getting caught up in the way it's said as opposed to the information that is being put out. Because if you're caught up in the tone, then I think then you're missing the message necessarily.
That's awesome.
Most impactful teacher that you've had?
Oh, 100%. Do you remember, were you in our adult roles class, Lynette Wilkes? Remember Wilkes?
No.
Which is so random, right?
I don't think I was. Adult roles.
I just love adult roles.
That was a challenging class.
It was, especially for us. Yeah, she just made me, like I said, she just made me feel special in her class, right? Regardless of the subject area, because what is adult roles, right? And what do you even necessarily learn there? But yeah, and I'm Facebook friends with her, and I've communicated. Like, she's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a teacher. As far as teacher goes, she is the reason why I wanted to be a teacher, because everybody in that class, I know. I think Jeff Criddle was definitely in there, but she just made you feel special, regardless of what you were learning. Because I don't even remember what we learned, but I remember how I felt in her class, and that's the most important thing to me.
Which is
100%
really
her.
Shaped everything about how you teach.
Yes.
That you want people to feel something in my class.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, she's living in St. George. Shout out Lynette Wilkes. She's amazing. And I remember she made us do this thing where you had to write a letter to yourself, and she would mail it to you like 5 years later, right?
Okay.
And so she did that, and you're sitting there, just impactful things like that where you're like, oh, this is who I was, and I was a freaking punk back then, and now look at where you've grown. It's just cool things like that she did, and that she really, like I said, super cared about you.
Yeah.
Like I think I was just joking around. I said, my name's not Souli, call me Bill with one L. And so the whole year she called me Bill with one L. Even at my missionary farewell, she's like, Bill, and came and gave me a big hug with one L is what it was. I'd put it on my papers and everything. Just stupid stuff like that. She didn't question it. She was just like, hey, you want to be called that, and so I'm gonna make if that makes you feel good, I'm gonna call you that. Just stuff like that.
I
But
love
think it's amazing for her.
That's
She's
so
awesome.
cool. I'm such a fan of educators. My story is very much tied to educators and teachers. So thank you for all you do. Seriously.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an incredible profession, and it would be so challenging, I feel like, in our day
Oh yeah.
to be a teacher, to be a coach, to do the things you're doing at the level you're doing it is remarkable.
Yeah, and to me, I think the most important thing is to not let the few get you down about what you're doing, right? Because it's not always roses and whatnot in the classroom with parents or with kids or on the field and whatnot. But when you let those few affect how you treat the mass, the group of the whole of your team or your classroom, then or get you out of the profession in general, then I think that those people are, you're letting them affect what you do. And so
You can't mail it in with teens.
Yeah.
You can't.
You can't.
Right? They
and-
know when you've mailed it in.
Yes. And especially with you get these emails from these parents, you're horrible, yada yada, or whether they're players or your students or whatever, and if you let that affect you, and then the rest of the people you're actually trying to making a difference with are aren't getting what you could give to them 100%. So I think that's kind of why it's not like you ignore all the critics and all the bad things, because I think some of that stuff has a lot of merit and it can help you grow as a person, but you can't let it affect your ability to impact others as well.
Yeah.
Because I talk to the teachers all the time, and they're complaining about a parent, and they want to quit, and they want to do this, and you're just like, why are you letting that one person affect you and your mindset and what you do when you have a classroom of kids that you're affecting who love you, and you're letting that one person get you down? And so I think if you can kind of just stay as even keel as possible, then I think you're great.
I've loved having you here. Obviously,
Thanks.
I love you.
Yeah, love you too, man.
And I've been looking forward to this since we started talking a couple weeks ago about getting you on this podcast. But I love the philosophies of Souli and
thank you.
who you are, what makes you who you are, and obviously, I think we learned tonight that you impact so many more than just what we see on Deseret News talking about your soccer team.
Yeah,
There's just so much more going on.
Thank you. Yeah,
And I think it's awesome.
thank you.
So
100%. I love
You likely will be on 100 more podcasts, throughout
doubt
your
that.
life. But in case this is your last,
Okay.
which I don't think it is, do you want to freestyle for just a minute? Any message you would send to kids, players, parents, children, wife, anything that you just want to take a minute or two and say?
No, not. I think it's been a great conversation, and I appreciate you guys having me on. I think the ability to talk and to think about your philosophy or how you view things can only help you, right?
Yeah.
As you're forming these, the way you think, and you think about why you are a certain way, I think it's been very helpful for me, and it's going to be impactful for me as I move forward as a coach and as a teacher, and hopefully as an administrator in the school as well. So I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity, because this was a great experience, and you guys are awesome. Thank you.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Thank you for coming on.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, you got it, bud.
You've all had your daily dose. Thank you so much.